HR people, what are the dirty secrets of online job applications? Story 1. Back in the late 2000s, I was the manager of a big video game store that doesn't exist anymore. People had to apply online, and the application included their resume, basic info, and something we called the quiz. The quiz was just like the ones you get when applying for most retail jobs. 50 questions asking how you feel about things like meeting new people or taking things without paying. The answers ranged from strongly disagree to strongly agree. But here's the trick. We didn't care about your true answers. We wanted to see if you could pick the correct ones. We graded you based on that. If you scored between 80% and 100%, you were in the green zone. If you had a resume, you'd usually get a call for an interview. If you scored between 60% and 79%, you were in the yellow zone. I could still interview you, but only if your resume was really strong. Anything below that was red, and we didn't consider those applications at all. It was wild how much importance was placed on this quiz instead of the person or resume. I had to really push for some yellow score applicants who were highly qualified and turned out to be excellent workers. Meanwhile, some green scorers who were hired quickly ended up being lazy or unreliable. Quick tip. We do see all applications, but if it's online, many get skipped fast. Try to think like a smart, confident executive when answering. Make sure your resume is clear and solid, and you have a good chance at getting an interview. Story 2. I worked as an assistant manager at a big company for several years. Over time, all of our job applications moved online, and many other companies are doing the same. Online applications are easier to sort and keep track of than paper ones. If your application ends up being ignored, it's usually because the system doesn't think you're the right fit for that job. But here's a helpful tip. If you apply online, call the company and ask to speak with the person in charge of hiring. Tell them your name, that you submitted an application, and ask a few polite questions about the job. This helps them remember you and can increase the chances that your application gets reviewed. Once you're being considered, everything depends on your experience and skills. Good luck. Story 3. Here's a tip that isn't about filling out a job application, but about the online tests some tech companies use during the hiring process. Many IT-related companies use these types of tests, and this method can help, though it does require some technical knowledge. First, go to the test page and create a test account. Then, open a tool that lets you pause certain parts of the browser. Start the test and pause the timer using that tool. Many of these test timers only run in the browser and not on the company's servers. This gives you time to think through each question at your own pace. When you're ready, resume the test, answer the question, and move to the next one. Repeat as needed. Just make sure everything still works correctly afterward. Once you feel confident, take the test again using your real account. Important note, use a private connection or privacy-focused browser during the practice round, just to be cautious. This method is meant to help you understand the questions better and prepare. Always be respectful of company rules. Story 4. I work at a company worth billions, and we're always hiring because the business just keeps growing. Every person who wants to work here, even if they were recommended or referred, has to fill out the online application. There's one clear reason for that. If you get the job, you'll be working on a computer for about 8 hours every day. So it's important that we know you're comfortable using a computer. If someone can't complete the online form, it's a sign they might not be ready for the kind of work we do. Story 5. I work in human resources at a department store. During the holiday season, we hire a lot of people. Honestly, it gets so busy that we're willing to give just about anyone a chance if they seem ready to work. All of our job applications are done online. Everyone goes through the same process. Most of the time, we don't even look at your resume. We focus on your application. If you show up for your interview, that's great. If you miss it, you can reschedule, but it doesn't leave the best impression. Also, please don't act disrespectful during the interview. Some people come in acting like they're better than everyone else, even if they have a lot of experience. Being rude or acting entitled doesn't help you get the job. We do read your application, but the face-to-face interview matters the most. That's where we decide if you're a good fit. I use your application just to come up with questions to ask, but how you present yourself in person is what really counts. In retail, making a good first impression is everything. Story 6. After reading everything in this thread, all I can say is wow. I usually don't get this upset, But today I have an interview after filling out 182 job applications. I answered every one of them honestly, only to find out now that many probably weren't even looked at. It feels like I wasted so much time. My interview is at a local factory for a machine operator job. It's a simple task, just placing a sheet of metal in the machine and taking out a molded part. It's frustrating. I've studied at 4 universities and 3 colleges. I've managed offices, led teams, and run entire departments for over 30 years. And now, I'm just hoping to get a job standing next to a machine so I can keep up with bills and hold on to my home. I didn't lose my last job because I quit or was let go. The company owner had some serious issues, and the financial officer handled the money like it was his own. Eventually, it caught up with them. Both the bank and the government stepped in, and everything collapsed. Yeah, I'm upset, but I'll keep going. And who knows, if people read my books, maybe one day I can become a full-time author and won't have to work in a factory just to stay afloat. Story 7. I work in human resources at a big company. When we post a job opening for 20 beginner-level positions, we often get over 750 applications. The online system helps us sort through them quickly. For example, if someone doesn't have a high school diploma or GED, they're not considered. Then we can search by keywords, like if the manager wants someone who speaks more than one language or someone who describes themselves as outgoing. Most companies now only take applications online. It's easier to manage, helps us follow legal rules, and filters out people who might not have basic computer skills. Let me know if you have any other questions. Story 8. I hope a lot of people read this because it shows what really happens behind the scenes. I create hiring software for large, well-known companies. Every day, I get updates from our client support team and also see the emails and tickets sent in by users of the system. Honestly, the people running the hiring process at these companies often don't know what they're doing. We regularly get messages asking why a certain applicant isn't showing up, why someone's resume won't open, or what happened to a specific candidate in the system. Many of these hiring teams don't use the software correctly and don't really understand how to make the process smoother. That's a big reason why, when you send in an online application, you may never hear back. One more thing I want to mention, the system includes something called SIFT questions. These are built into the application form to filter out people based on their answers. A lot of applicants are automatically rejected just because they didn't answer the questions in the way the system was set to accept. So when you spend 20 minutes filling out your 17 job application, there's a good chance it never even gets seen by a real person. It's frustrating, but it's the reality. Story 9. I work in human resources, and online applications are mostly used to make the hiring process easier and more organized. There's no secret trick to getting picked first. We look at resumes and applications when we have time and choose people who seem to match the job. One of the biggest factors, besides your qualifications, is timing. If you send your application right around the time I'm reviewing them, you have a better chance. If it comes in too early, it might get buried. If it's too late, I may have already made a decision. All the resumes go into one big inbox. If the company uses a more advanced system like Talio, which I don't really enjoy using, the applications can be sorted by job type and location and then sent directly to the hiring manager instead of HR. Story 10. Just need to get this off my chest. It really frustrates me when HR teams post entry-level tech jobs but ask for 5 to 10 years of experience. I actually spoke with a couple of HR people at different companies, and they said they do this because they think only the people who really want the job and are super motivated will apply. All this really does is make it hard to take the years of experience section seriously anymore. It's honestly pretty frustrating. Story 11. I'm a hiring manager, and here are some things I'd recommend to anyone applying for a job. The best way to get into a company is through someone you already know, but that's not the only way. One reason it helps is because recruiters and HR don't always understand exactly what the hiring manager is looking for. As a job applicant, your goal is to show the hiring manager that you can help solve problems. Some people have all the right skills and work hard, but they don't focus on what actually needs to get done, or they can be difficult to work with. First, you have to get past the frustrating online application system. Most hiring managers dislike it just as much as applicants do. The system isn't there to help you. It's just meant to filter people out. It's like a fence. Its only job is to stop those who can't or won't try to climb over it. The manager usually gives the system a list of keywords to look for in resumes. These keywords aren't perfect, but they help. What you can do is read the job posting carefully and figure out which words or skills they might be scanning for. Then update your resume to include as many of those words as you can. Just don't lie. It's okay to word things in a way that makes your experience sound stronger, as long as it's still true. Yes, hiring managers will often look you up online. What we're really looking for is honesty and whether you might cause problems later. We don't care about most personal stuff unless you've posted something that shows really poor judgment, and that's actually pretty rare. Story 12. I recently started my own business, and I've already received a lot of job applications from people I didn't even reach out to. Some of them even send a long list of references along with their resume. The problem is, most of these people haven't spent even 5 minutes learning about my company. It feels like they just pull names from a business directory and send out their info to everyone. I even replied to a few of them, asking why they want to work at my company and what they think they can offer, but I never got a response. Anyway, if you're a skilled and motivated iOS, web, or database developer, and you're interested in working on exciting projects related to digital wallet technology. Story 13. I used to work in human resources at a big hotel company. Our location had over 700 employees. And honestly, one of the best things you could do was call us or even come by in person to drop off a printed resume. When someone handed us a resume directly, we'd usually look at it right away and pass it to the next person. As long as the resume looked good, it really helped you stand out. At our hotel, we'd take the resume and also encourage you to apply online if you hadn't already. We even had computers in the lobby that people could use to apply. That way, we had your resume in hand and you were officially in the system. When I could, I'd even try to schedule a quick interview right then. We really appreciated people who showed up in person. It showed motivation and effort, which left a good impression. Also, a lot of times people applied online just as we were finishing hiring, so calling us was a good way to find out quickly if positions were still open. It saved people from getting that automatic, "We're moving forward with other candidates" email. I really liked working in HR. It wasn't about judging anyone for calling or stopping by. It was about helping the company find the right people. And personally, I enjoyed helping those people find jobs. Story 14. I used to be an intern in the HR department at Miramax. My job was to go through the large number of resumes we got every day. First of all, yes, we really did look at every resume. We had to. But most of them got set aside quickly if the person clearly didn't meet the basic requirements. I would pick out the resumes that matched what we were looking for and show them to my manager. Then they would choose the top 10 to move forward with interviews. We always liked resumes that were clear and to the point, listing only jobs that were related to the one being applied for. For example, if you were applying to be a marketing manager, we didn't need to see that you once worked at a pet store. Also, it didn't matter if someone sent their resume online or by email. Everything ended up in the same inbox. Story 15. I was part of the hiring process. Here's a simple breakdown of how things usually go. Online resumes are often the last place we look, unless we need someone with a very specific skill. For example, we once had a hard time finding someone who understood Mappy, a system used with Microsoft Exchange. In most other cases, we usually ask people we've worked with before and trust, instead of picking someone randomly from an online application. Right now, we're hiring for a senior product management role. For that, we are checking online applications because we need someone with experience in a specific area. But for roles that don't require that exact background, we usually fill those from inside the company. If you're not a recent graduate, your college doesn't matter that much, unless we went to the same school. Even then, it only helps a little. What really matters, where you've worked, what you can do, and your experience. You need something that makes you stand out. That could be real project experience, a strong internship, or working on something valuable. If you had an internship in business development, that's great. But if your only experience is working in retail and you're applying for a strategy or marketing job, it probably won't be a match. We've seen a lot of fancy words on resumes, and we can tell when someone is just trying to make basic tasks sound more important. It's easy to recognize, especially when you've done the same kind of work yourself in the past. We can also tell when someone just went to school and expected that to be enough for a job. If your resume is empty beyond your classes, that stands out too. At job fairs, some companies will take note of how friendly or professional you are. Sometimes we'll leave a small note or add your name to a file for follow-up, but how that's handled really depends on the company. Story 16. I've been looking for a law job for over 3 years now, and it's been really exhausting and frustrating. It gets tough coming online and seeing how many people work in IT, where things seem a lot simpler. They have short, fun resumes filled with skills they actually learned and can talk about. Their tests are usually based on clear answers like math or coding, so they can get good scores more easily. In law, the process feels completely different. My resume needs to be pages long, full of skills they don't even teach you in university. If you haven't learned those skills on the job, you can't get hired. But how do you learn them if you can't get a job? It feels like an endless cycle. Even trying to volunteer is hard. If you don't already have the right skills, some places won't even let you help for free. Then there's the pressure to include awards, though only a few people ever get them, and you still have to write essays, a cover letter, and get referrals and recommendation letters just to apply. It's tiring. And in the end, it can feel like none of it matters unless you know the right person or fit a certain image. I just wish the process felt as straightforward as it looks in other fields. Story 17. I helped set up an online hiring system at my last job. Here's one useful thing I learned. Many of these systems use keyword search tools to filter resumes. They sort applications by how closely they match the job posting. So here's how you can use that to your advantage. Read the job ad carefully. Then look over your resume and see if you've done similar work. If so, change the words you use to match the ones in the job ad. You can also check the company's website for other job posts and try to match the language they use. These systems aren't very advanced, so even just adding some of their key terms to your resume can help your application show up higher in the results when the recruiter looks through them. It won't guarantee you get the job, but it will help make sure the recruiter actually sees your application, and that's a good start. Story 18. Not an HR manager, but I've worked in IT with HR software. Here are a few things I've learned. The way your resume looks doesn't matter as much as how well it loads into the software HR uses to track applications. If the format doesn't upload correctly, your resume might not even show up properly. For example, using tables for layout can sometimes cause problems in the system. If you want to improve your chances of being noticed, the best way is to know someone at the company. Even just having a friend mention your name to the hiring manager can help a lot. Something like, "Hey, my friend applied. Can you take a look at their resume?" I've also seen situations where a company creates the job post based on a specific person they already want to hire. That way, they can turn down other applicants by saying they don't meet a certain requirement, even if that requirement wasn't important from the start. It's one way they make sure they can offer the job to their chosen person. Personally, I've gotten 2 jobs because I knew someone, and my current job came from someone finding my resume or contact info online and reaching out to me. Story 19. As someone who used to work as a recruiter, the best advice I can give is this: keep your resume short and very simple. 1 page is best. It should include your name, contact details, work experience, technical skills, and by that I don't mean things like team player or positive attitude, and your education. That's it. No one really looks at your career goals or where you volunteer. And if you include anything personal, like details about your beliefs or anything else that can't be asked about in an interview, we might skip your application. Not because of bias, but because if those details are known, it could lead to legal issues if you're not hired. Your goal is to make it easy for the recruiter to see your experience, skills, and education in 10 seconds or less. That's usually how long they look at a resume. Save your personal story and passion for the interview. Story 20. I work at a large company with over 10,000 employees. I'm part of the IT team that supports the HR department, so I get to see how job postings and applications work behind the scenes. One thing I've learned, hiring family or close connections can lead to problems, so it's usually not a good idea. When I'm out in the city or meet someone I think has potential, I try to help them out. I sit down with them and help fill out the company's online job application. I keep track of their login details so I can help later. When jobs open up, I enter their name for positions that match what the company is looking for. Then I call them and give helpful tips on what the hiring manager might be looking for in the interview. In the past 7 years, I've helped around 50 people land great jobs this way. I just like helping others succeed. Story 21. I wrote an article about submitting resumes online, and it gets a lot of views from people searching for help with job applications. Over the past year, I've done a lot of hiring for marketing roles, including web developers, designers, and marketing managers. Based on that experience, I've seen many common mistakes that lead to resumes being rejected right away. First, do not call the company trying to speak with someone about your application. That rarely helps and often backfires. Second, don't submit the same resume more than once or apply for multiple roles at the same company. It comes across as spammy and unfocused. Grammar and spelling errors, instant rejection. I've tossed out hundreds of resumes because of basic writing mistakes. Always double-check your work. Skip lines like references available upon request. Everyone knows that's standard. It takes up space and adds no value. Keep your resume short. One page is enough. A short, clear resume shows you know how to be concise, and that's something hiring managers appreciate. Apply only if you're truly qualified. I've gotten good at scanning for key phrases. If I'm hiring for a web developer and I see things like retail or print designer, I usually stop reading. Experience in the actual field matters most. School clubs, restaurant jobs, or unrelated work might be impressive, but they don't replace direct experience. Don't have experience yet? Look into unpaid internships. They're easier to get than you might think, and they help you build real-world experience in your field. Show your work. If you're applying for a creative job like graphic or web design, include links to real examples, projects you've done for clients or companies. Personal projects are nice, but hiring managers want to see professional work with clear descriptions and links. No generic resumes. If you start with "to whom it may concern," your resume might get skipped. Always write a personalized greeting and tailor your resume and portfolio for the specific job. And one last tip, you are your best resume. The smartest thing I ever did was create my own website using my full name as the domain. I filled it with my portfolio, blog posts, advice, and background in my field. Now when people look me up, they see proof of my work and experience. Because of that, I rarely need to send out a resume anymore. I often get job offers and calls from recruiters just because of my online presence. Story 22. I work in talent acquisition for a major bank, and over the years, I've reviewed thousands of job applications and resumes. Here's something most people don't realize. The person reviewing your application is often looking for reasons not to move forward with you. So you need to make sure your application doesn't give them an easy reason to skip you. First tip, always list your salary expectations as negotiable. And make sure you spell negotiable correctly. It really does matter. Second, if the application asks if you've ever left a job unexpectedly or were let go, and the answer is yes, don't go into detail. Just say you're happy to explain more during the interview. That's the right place to talk about it. Third, use keywords from the job posting in your resume. Most employers quickly scan resumes for specific words that match the job. It's a good idea to adjust your resume for each job you apply to so that it fits what they're looking for. A little effort to match your resume to the job description can make a big difference. Story 23. I used to be in charge of hiring at my old retail job for a few years. One of the most important tips I can give is this. Never say you left your last job because of issues with management or coworkers. Even if your old boss was really difficult, don't bring that up during the interview. If you're worried that a past employer might say something negative about you, don't stress too much. Most retail stores and larger companies don't give personal references over the phone. When I called to check references, I was usually given a number for the company's main office. After spending a long time on the phone with an automated system, the only info I get was the dates the person worked there. Because of legal rules, most businesses avoid giving detailed references unless it's a small, privately owned shop or unless you ask your previous boss directly for a written recommendation. Keep it professional, stay positive, and focus on what you bring to the job. Story 24. A few years ago, I was really in need of a job, so I applied to my local McDonald's. The online application took over an hour to complete. I went in for the interview, but they didn't hire me. That day was really tough. I'm not sure why they turned me down, but I think it might have been because I was 22, and they could pay someone younger, like a 16-year-old, less. A few weeks later, I saw that another McDonald's nearby was hiring, so I went through the whole process again, filling out the same long form with all the usual questions. But this time, right after I hit submit, I got a message saying I wasn't selected and couldn't apply again for 6 months. Basically, once I was rejected by one store, the system marked me as not eligible anywhere else for a while, probably because they wanted applicants with more experience. It really brought me down. It felt awful getting rejected by a place like McDonald's. Thankfully, I ended up getting a better job that paid more and matched my skills. But that whole experience made me lose trust in online application systems. Story 25. This might be a little different from the main topic, but it's helpful advice for the future. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, you should make one. And when you do, treat it like a professional resume. Include your work experience, accomplishments, education, certifications, and skills. Keep your network focused on your career. LinkedIn is not like other social media. Don't connect with everyone you've ever met. Try to keep it professional. Some companies use LinkedIn to find employees with specific skills. It's a simple and affordable way for recruiters to search for the right people. So having a strong LinkedIn profile can really help you get noticed. Story 26. From my experience as a hiring manager working closely with our HR team, the most important lesson I've learned for job seekers is this: read the job posting carefully and make sure you include everything they ask for. If it says to include a cover letter, make sure you add one. At our company, the HR team does the first round of screening. If something is missing, like a cover letter or a required document, they may reject the whole application before the hiring manager even sees it. So take your time, follow the instructions, and double-check that you've submitted everything. It really can make the difference between getting considered or being skipped. Story 27. I'm the hiring manager at a small business that usually has between 20 to 80 employees per location. We're part of a larger international company. I personally read all job applications, and I reach out to about 95% of applicants by phone. The phone call is more important than most people realize. My first impression of you doesn't come from how you dress for the interview. It comes from how you answer the phone or what your voicemail sounds like. I've skipped leaving messages for a lot of people who had unprofessional voicemail greetings. I simply don't have time for jokes or casual messages like, "Hey, it's Dakota. Just kidding, I'm not here." If you're applying for a job, your voicemail should sound polite and professional. That small detail can make a big difference. Story 28. I'm very involved in the hiring process for a large company. It's not my main role, but I've learned a lot over time. First off, no, your online applications are not ignored. And no, they're not just used to see what's out there. When you apply to a big company like ours, your application usually stays in the system for around 3 months. If you don't get selected during that time, your application is removed. This helps us avoid situations where someone applied years ago, but has since moved on or changed careers. One thing our company does that's very intentional: we make our online application long. It takes almost an hour to complete. This is meant to filter out people who aren't serious about the job. If someone isn't willing to spend that time filling it out, they probably aren't a good fit for us. I've seen many comments online from college students saying they won't bother with long applications. That's their choice, but it also means they likely won't be working with our company. As for where your application goes, it's sent to our HR department, which is based in Texas. Then, based on your skills, experience, and location, someone from HR will contact the local director to see if there's interest. If they're interested, you'll get called for an interview. If not, you won't hear back. That's just how the process works. Story 29. In my opinion, HR is often the most frustrating department in a company. I've seen many cases where the right person wasn't hired or was let go because of small, unimportant things. HR sometimes expects everyone to think and answer like they do, even when the questions have nothing to do with the job itself. Personally, I've had much better luck when my first interview was with someone from the actual department I was applying to, instead of someone from HR. One of the most pointless questions I've ever been asked was during an interview with a very well-known company. Out of nowhere, the interviewer asked, "So, why did you decide to wear that shirt today?" It felt completely irrelevant. It's moments like that which explain why so many people feel frustrated with the way HR handles hiring. Story 30. There aren't many big secrets in hiring, but here's something people often forget. As frustrating as it is to apply for jobs, it can be just as frustrating for the people reviewing all the applications. And I see every one of them. I handle most of the hiring for my company. We're not a huge business, but we get a large number of applicants for every job we post. We don't use fancy software to filter resumes. I do it all manually. I also have a background in this field and follow employment laws carefully. It's a long and detailed process, and I'm expected to move quickly while still being fair. So here are some tips that might help you stand out when many people are applying for the same job. 1. Fill out the full application. If the form asks for your work history, don't just write "C resume." That makes it harder for me to review, and it comes across like you didn't put in the effort. It's better to have everything in one place. 2. Write a custom cover letter. I read cover letters for every qualified applicant. If your letter is addressed to a different company, it feels careless. You can use a similar format, but at least take a moment to change the company name and date. 3. Don't give up if you don't have experience. I know how tough it is when jobs ask for 2 years of experience for an entry-level role. I've been there myself, master's degree, but no hands-on work. Still, don't just say no experience. Go out and build it. Join local professional groups, connect with others in the field, and look for chances to volunteer. Unpaid work may not be fun, but it can lead to real opportunities in jobs. 4. Make your accomplishments easy to see. If you did something important, don't hide it at the bottom of your resume. Put it near the top where it's easy to spot. Don't make me guess what you're good at. Tell me clearly why you'd be a great hire. Sorry if this was long, but I wanted to give real advice that can actually help. Good luck out there. Story 31. I work at a small retail store. When people ask about applying, we tell them to apply online and that we don't use paper applications anymore, even though we still have them, just not openly available. We say our whole hiring process is online, and technically that's true. But here's the catch. We only hire people who bring in a printed copy of their application or resume. We rarely, if ever, check the online applications, even though I'm sure there's a way to do it. If someone prints their application after applying online and brings it in, that makes a big difference. Most people don't bother, though. And if someone hands in a resume or paper application without applying online, we still ask them to go back and apply through the website and create an account. Summary: we tell people to apply online, but we mainly look at the ones who bring in a printed application or resume in person. Still, they need to apply online afterward to be in the system. Story 32. I used to be in charge of sorting through job applications and deciding which ones to send to the next step. Before even reading the details, I would set aside any applications that had certain problems right away. If someone used blue pen, pencil, or anything other than black ink, I didn't keep it. I even saw a few filled out in red pen. I also set aside any applications with spelling mistakes, messy handwriting, missing sections, or no cover letter. This process usually cut the stack down to about 1/3 of its original size. The remaining applications would be passed on for further review. My thinking was simple. If someone didn't take the time to make a good first impression, they probably wouldn't show much effort later on either. Story 33. Some people are making a lot of money from hiring software that barely works, if it works at all. And even if you manage to get through the software, you still have to deal with the HR department, which in my experience can be just as frustrating. One of the most memorable experiences I had was 5 or 6 years ago. I applied for a job at a company where my friend was a manager. He gave me a strong recommendation, and I even spoke with his supervisor about the position before I applied. I made sure my resume matched the job requirements and completed the online application. Just to be safe, I also dropped off a printed copy at the company's HR office. When I handed in my documents, the person at the HR desk treated me in a surprisingly rude way, and I still don't know why. I waited a week, then 2, but heard nothing. I stayed in touch with my friend and his supervisor the whole time. Eventually, the supervisor went to ask HR about the general status of applications, not mine directly, to avoid any issues of favoritism. The response? HR claimed that no resumes had been submitted in the past few months. Nothing ever came from that application. Honestly, I believe the HR staff member I spoke with simply threw it away. To make matters worse, I could never reach anyone by phone, and no one from HR ever returned my calls. It was a discouraging experience, and it made me lose trust in how some companies handle applications. Story 34. I used to be an operations manager at a trucking company for a few years. We focused on giving people second chances, meaning we often hired people who had a hard time finding work elsewhere. I can't speak much about what HR does since they handle things their own way, but I made the final hiring decisions. So here's some advice based on what I've seen. Top tip, make a new resume for each job you apply for. Remember, you're trying to show your value to someone who doesn't know you. Talk about what you did in past jobs, but don't break it down hour by hour. Yes, I've seen that. Keep your resume simple. One font, clean format, no fancy designs. These don't help, and sometimes they make your file hard to read after uploading. What's probably getting in your way are the minimum requirements that companies set. When there are lots of people applying, especially in a slow economy, companies become very selective. If you're applying for a job and don't have experience in that field, your best chance might be to hand a resume in person to HR. There's a better chance they'll look at it compared to applying online, where it may get filtered out. In our company, I don't think we used keyword filters. Our industry didn't really need them, but almost every job had some kind of experience requirement. Sometimes they were looking to train someone new. If so, they look at how long you stayed at past jobs. Other times, they needed people with 3 to 5 years of experience. If your experience didn't match that range, your application might not even be reviewed. Another tip, don't list every single job you've had. We mainly care about the ones that are related to the position. And if you were let go from a past job, don't include that. It's better to just leave a gap and not mention it. Even in a company that gave people second chances, I wouldn't usually hire someone who listed being fired on their resume. Just being honest. One last thing, know your state's employment laws. If you're worried a past job might say something negative when contacted, many states have rules about what former employers can say. In some places, they're only allowed to share basic facts like your start date, end date, and whether they'd rehire you. They may not be allowed to share pay or personal opinions. Good luck. Story 35. I'm a recruiter at a large company, and the best advice I can give is to be patient with the online application systems. Yes, they can be frustrating, but they're frustrating for us too. I also work on the IT side, so I handle all the issues people have when applying online. My company uses a system called PeopleSoft, and to be honest, I'm not a fan of it. Right now, we don't allow uploads of resumes or other documents. That means the resume you build inside the application system is the only version we'll see. If you only enter your name and address, that's all we'll have to review. And if I send that to a manager, they probably won't give it a second look. The good news is I do personally check every resume sent for jobs I manage. But it can get really difficult when people leave out important info like graduation dates or even what they studied in school. So my advice, fill out everything in the application, even if it feels repetitive. That's what gives you a real chance to be seen. Story 36. I work for one of the biggest and most popular companies in a major city in the Pacific Northwest. Right now, I'm helping to pick a new person to join our team. Do you hate filling out the same information more than once? I get it. But unfortunately, that's just how it goes. We got 670 applications for this one job. If our hiring team didn't use an automatic system to filter through some of them, it would take forever to review each one by hand. It's not fun for people applying, but we also can't spend 4 extra hours a day going over every single application. We already work over 9 hours a day as it is. If someone who already works here recommends you for the job, your application moves straight to the first round. In that case, I'll probably read your resume. But if you don't have a referral, we usually only see your resume if it's excellent. That means it's easy to read, has no mistakes, and clearly shows what makes you stand out without unnecessary fluff. And yes, we do notice what school you went to. Out of the 670 people who applied, we'll only interview maybe 6 or 7. Is it totally fair? Not really. But we don't have the time or resources to make it perfect. Story 37. I used to hire people for tech jobs at a government office. There were a lot of rules, but honestly, there were also many ways around them. For example, we were supposed to hire the person with the highest interview score. But if we didn't want to hire that person, we could cancel the job and post it again 2 weeks later. We couldn't ask people how old they were, but you could guess based on when they finished high school or joined the military. If you want to get hired, the first step is making sure you actually meet the job requirements. That might seem obvious, but I once saw someone apply for a high-level tech job when they had only worked in construction their whole life. It's also really important to match your resume to the job posting. Use the same words and phrases listed in the job description, especially if the job is in tech. If you don't, someone without a tech background might not realize you're a good fit and could reject your application by mistake. As for interviews, just be yourself and understand the work you're applying for. Dress in a way that fits the company's style. And don't try to fake your knowledge. If you get the job, they'll expect you to actually know how to do it. Story 38. Without reading everyone else's comments, here's my experience. I used to do hiring for a chain of truck stops with around 200 locations. I was the manager of the restaurant section, but I could also see the job applications for all parts of the business. Honestly, less than 10% of the applications were ever opened. I got daily updates about how many new applications I had, but I only checked them when we really needed to hire someone. Even then, I only looked at the ones where the person applied for the correct job and scored higher than average on the customer service questions. I could see those scores without opening the full application. Managers in the other parts of the business didn't usually check applications at all. They would just ask people they already knew, like friends of current workers or former coworkers, to come in for a quick interview. If they liked them and wanted to hire them, they'd ask them to fill out the application as part of the new hire process. After talking to lots of other managers in the company, I found out this was the normal way things were done. Story 39. Don't use recruiters. For years, I worked with recruiters while looking for tech jobs. I got lots of interviews, but never actually landed a position through them. Recently, I had to hire someone at my current job. So I asked my office manager to reach out to a few staffing agencies to help us find more applicants. That's when I found out something surprising. They charge a 20% fee based on the new hire's yearly pay. For an $80,000 job, that's an extra $16,000. To stay within budget, we would have to offer the person less money than what the job normally pays. Instead of giving someone a disappointing offer, we usually give priority to people who apply through other ways, like job boards or online listings. Also, the candidates we got from the agencies weren't very strong. Many recruiters don't seem to know the difference between Java and JavaScript. Some even think a web designer and a web developer are the same thing. It made the whole process pretty frustrating. Story 40. I work in IT and have hired quite a few people over the past few years. I can't speak for how the HR team handles things, but from a manager's point of view, there are a few key things I look for in a resume. First, I look for important words related to the job. If I see the right ones, I take a closer look at what the person has done with those skills. Spelling and grammar really matter. Your resume is the first impression you make. If the writing is hard to understand or has a lot of mistakes, it's not a good sign. I'm not perfect at writing either, but on something as important as a resume, you should do your best. It shows you pay attention to details or that you didn't take the time to do something important the right way. Certifications also matter to me. They don't prove someone is a top-level expert, but they do show that the person wants to keep learning and improve. That's something I really value. Work history is important too. We don't hire short-term workers or contractors, only full-time employees. So if someone changes jobs every couple of years, it's a small red flag. I want to invest in someone who will stay. That alone won't stop me from hiring a good candidate, but it could be the deciding factor between two people. That said, if someone has been doing contract work and now wants something more stable, maybe because they started a family, that changes how I look at their job history. In that case, it makes sense. Story 41. Tractors. The owner told me to give an application to anyone who asked and to accept any resume. Then I had to review them. Here's how it usually went. If there were more than 2 spelling mistakes, it went straight to the trash. I still remember a few people who couldn't even spell the name of the city they lived in. If the writing was full of grammar mistakes, it was rejected. If the person had no education beyond high school, not even a class, training, or anything that showed they were trying to learn, I didn't move forward with it. If someone wanted a job in sales but didn't mention any computer skills, not a good sign. If they applied for a sales job but didn't seem friendly or came in dressed very messy, I didn't consider them. If someone wanted to be a mechanic but had no real experience or training, it wasn't enough. Helping their dad with a lawnmower once didn't count. You'd be surprised how many young guys thought changing oil one time made them ready for a mechanic role at a dealership. And finally, if I personally knew the person and didn't trust them or knew they caused trouble in the past, I didn't consider them either. To be honest, I probably threw away over 90% of the applications and resumes. Some of them went in the trash before the person even left the store. Story 42. I'm not sure if anyone else has shared something like this, but here's my experience. I'm a software developer, and I spent almost 2 years building an online job application system for the company I work at. It was meant to be a temporary fix until the HR team could buy a professional system, but I learned a lot about how hiring managers look at applications. We allowed people to upload their resumes, but many of our job openings, like janitorial, maintenance, or security roles, didn't require one. So most of the information we used came directly from the application form. I had to create reports that searched our database and pulled up applications based on certain keywords. These were found in the past job sections, education history, or special skills that applicants filled in themselves. One big thing I learned: you need to be clear and specific when listing your skills. For example, don't just write Microsoft Office if you're mainly good at Microsoft Word. Instead, actually write Microsoft Word. Be as exact as possible, because it really makes a difference when the system is trying to match your skills to the job. Story 43. I worked as a manager at a large retail company for many years, a well-known Fortune 100 brand. During that time, I helped hire dozens of new team members. While most companies now use online applications, this company required people to apply in person using a computer station inside the store. The reason for this was simple. They believe that someone who makes the effort to come in and apply is likely more serious about getting the job than someone who just clicks apply from home. I didn't fully agree with that idea, but I have to say it really helped us find great people. As a manager, it could be frustrating to get called away from my work 7 to 10 times a day to talk to people applying. But every now and then, someone would walk in who made a great impression: how they spoke, how they were dressed, and how prepared they were. I would sometimes interview them right there on the spot, and those people often turned out to be some of our best employees. If you're applying for a retail job, here's my advice: try to speak directly with a hiring manager. Quickly explain who you are, what job you're applying for, and your experience. Ask politely if you can leave your resume. If they say no, be respectful and thank them anyway. Dress neatly, not necessarily a suit, but at least a button-down shirt and nice pants. Speak clearly, make eye contact, and show good manners. That short conversation could help you stand out in a big way. Story 44. I'm a senior level tester, and in the past, I worked on hiring systems for many big-name companies, the ones you've definitely heard of. Want to know a behind-the-scenes secret? Most of these companies use keyword filters to remove more than half of the resumes they get without a real person ever looking at them. I call this process buzzword bingo. When you apply for a job at one of these companies, if your resume doesn't include all of the exact keywords they're searching for, like Java, UX, or Cognos, your application won't show up in search results. Even if you have some of the right experience, a partial match usually doesn't help. What's frustrating is that this could easily be changed by tweaking the system settings. But when I suggested it, the answer was always the same: it's working the way we planned. Here's my advice: even if it sounds a bit old-fashioned, you might get better results by going through a recruiter who knows exactly what each company is looking for, or by mailing your resume directly to someone in HR. If you mail it, do it right. Double-check your spelling. Make sure it looks clean and well-formatted. Print it on nice paper and sign it by hand. Why do this? When someone reads it or scans it into the system, they'll often fix up the keywords themselves. That can help your resume get noticed. If you're applying online, try using different versions of tech terms. Say MS and Microsoft. Use words like cloud, portal, or other common terms for your field. And good luck. Getting past the filters takes effort, but it's possible. Story 45. Back when things were going well, I worked as a recruiter for a large distribution center. One of the funniest parts about handling job applications was the test at the end of the application. If someone didn't score in the green range, I couldn't even schedule them for an interview. Sometimes I would come across great candidates, but I had to tell them to try again, and this time to answer the questions in a calm and thoughtful way. Most of the jobs were warehouse positions, so we usually didn't need a resume. And just to be honest, I never listened to voicemail messages. I got so many each day, it just wasn't possible to keep up with them. Story 46. I go through a lot of CVs as part of my job. Someone else can explain the difference between a CV and a resume. I'm based in the UK, and I hire people for senior level management roles in a very competitive field. These are people who would work directly under me. Here are some tips from what I've seen. If the job post lists minimum requirements and you don't meet them, you're most likely wasting your time by applying. A common example is when someone in a junior role tries to use this job as a way to move up. If I wanted to promote someone into the role, I would choose someone already on my team, someone I know and have worked with for years. Tailor your CV to the job posting. I spend time making sure the skills listed in the job description match what's actually needed for the role. You should update your CV to reflect those skills and include a cover letter that clearly explains why you're applying. For example, say the job ad mentions needing someone who can lead a team and hit tough financial goals. Your cover letter might say something like, your job ad says you're looking for a strong leader who can meet challenging financial targets. In my last role as your title, I led a team of a number of people. When I started, our results were insert result, and 6 months later, they improved to better result. This happened because I introduced strategy or tool. If you can do this and land an interview, that means your application met the basic requirements. Now it's time to show in the interview that you can really do the job. Here are 2 key things to focus on. Preparation: read the job description carefully. Think of at least 2 strong examples where you've done well in those areas. That way, when you're asked a question, you have good stories to share. Presentation: of course, arrive on time and dress professionally, but also speak clearly and with confidence. The best way to answer questions is by using the STAR method. Situation: what was going on? Task: what needed to be done? Action: what did you do? Result: what happened because of your actions? Focusing on the result is the most important part. It helps you stand out and avoids follow-up questions that could catch you off guard. This might seem basic, but in my experience, 90% of applicants could benefit from knowing and using these tips. Story 47. I understand why companies want to find the best people when hiring, especially when they're looking for reliable and hardworking staff. I'm still new to the hiring process, and so far it's been a bit disappointing. Just last week, I hired someone for the first time ever, and she quit after only 2 days because she got a better paying offer somewhere else. That left us right back where we started, still needing to fill the role. Earlier this week, I set up 3 interviews based on the CVs we received and when people said they were available. 2 of them didn't even show up. The one person who did come and told me during the interview that he left his last job because it was too much work. That was a red flag for me. What happened to having a strong work ethic? Or at the very least, showing up when you say you will. Story 48. I worked in human resources for a couple of years, and my biggest advice is this: always be honest on your job application. When you check that little box at the end saying everything you wrote is true, that means your information must be accurate. If it's not, the company has the right to take back the job offer. That's because giving false information is treated very seriously. So don't make up anything that might be found during a background check. Be honest about the schools you went to, the degrees you earned, and the job titles you've had. We do check those things, and if something doesn't match, you might not get the job. Story 49. Back when I worked as a desktop technician, I used to help support the software that handled online job applications for the company. I didn't use the system myself, but sometimes I was called in by the HR team to fix issues or help with setup. That's when I noticed something surprising. The software was set up to filter resumes based on certain keywords, phrases, or combinations of words. Because of that, a lot of applications were automatically filtered out or even sent straight to the deleted folder. Only a small number actually made it to the people in HR who reviewed applications. So if you're applying online, know that your resume might not even be seen by a person unless it includes the exact words the system is looking for. Story 50. I live in the Atlanta metro area and work in IT. Back in 1999 and 2000, I lost my job and started applying everywhere I could. I got 8 interviews. Out of those 8, 7 companies told me I got the job and to come in at a certain time to fill out paperwork. But here's the problem. Those 7 either called later to say they weren't hiring anymore, or I showed up and they told me there was now a hiring freeze. Most of the time, I felt like that was just an excuse. The 8th company rejected me for being overqualified, but a few months later, they called me back for a different job, and I got it. In 2010, I was out of work again, and this time it was even harder to find something. I applied for a job at CNN and went through 5 interviews from September to December. They said it was down to me and one other person. They told me I'd hear back by the Wednesday before or after Christmas. I didn't hear anything, so I followed up in January, only to find out they had forgotten about me. In the end, I didn't get the job because I didn't have a formal degree, even though I had more than 14 years of experience. And that job would have paid less than what I was making before. But here's the good part. About 6 months later, I got hired at a different company for $10,000 more than my last job. And I've been really happy there ever since. Here's the lesson. To get a great job, you really need 3 things. A clear, focused resume with the right keywords to get noticed. Strong interview skills. If your resume isn't packed with experience, this is your chance to show why you'd be a great fit. An inside connection. Since 1991, almost every job I've had came from someone already working at the company putting in a good word for me. HR filters out a lot of people, but they don't always notice things like motivation, personality, and problem-solving skills. You can take someone smart and driven, even if they're new, and train them to be amazing. That can be more valuable than hiring someone who's been in the field for 10 years but doesn't really care anymore. Story 51. I've sent out hundreds of online job applications with almost no luck. Then I decided to start reaching out to people I had connected with on LinkedIn a long time ago. One of them was actually a vice president at a major company. I sent him a message, and he replied saying I should apply online and that he would see what he could do. 2 days later, he followed up by emailing me the contact info of the recruiter and asked me to send my resume and cover letter directly to her. The takeaway: if someone in a high position wants you to be considered, they'll make sure your resume is seen. Story 52. Always try to give the kind of answers the employer is hoping to hear. I've had 2 job interviews so far, not many chances in a country where jobs are really hard to find, and both went well because I focused on what they wanted to hear, not just what I personally wanted to say. There's a difference between being professional and being completely honest in a job setting. It's not always ideal, but that's how things often work. This is a really helpful thread. Thanks for starting the conversation. Story 53. I work in the gaming industry, and I'm currently the head of marketing at a mobile game startup. I've hired a few people before, so here are some tips from what I've seen. If you're applying to work at a startup, you need to have something to show. If you're an artist or designer, share a portfolio. If you're a developer, link your GitHub. If you're in marketing, business development, or something similar, show me a blog, LinkedIn posts, or even answers you've written on professional forums. If you don't have any work examples, it's unlikely you'll get an interview. I don't like multi-page resumes. I usually stop reading after the first page, so keep it short and clear. You should have a complete LinkedIn profile. If you don't have any recommendations on there, ask some former coworkers or classmates to write one for you. I know most of them will be positive, but I still read them, not just to see how skilled you are, but to get a sense of how well you work with others. People usually won't write recommendations for someone they didn't like. If you know someone at the company, try to get them to speak up for you. A good referral goes a long way. Cover letters matter. I usually read those more carefully than resumes. That's where I look to see if you're truly excited about the company, the product, or the job. It also helps me understand how well you write, which is really important for many roles. In general, I think of job hunting like a strategy game. If you're only applying through job boards, that's not the best move, especially with startups. Companies post jobs to let people know they're hiring, but they often expect a lot of unqualified resumes from that. Once a job is posted, your best move is to connect with a person who does the hiring, but not through a formal interview. Send a polite message on LinkedIn and ask if they'd be open to a short chat to share ideas or advice. When you meet them in a casual setting, the conversation feels different. If they like you, they'll likely help move things forward. And if they don't, you probably wouldn't have enjoyed working there anyway. Story 54. Here are some smart tips to help your job application get noticed. Download your LinkedIn resume as a PDF and use that version when applying. It looks clean on mobile devices, works well with the software companies use to scan resumes, and shows that you're focused on your skills and experience, not flashy designs. Recruiters are often curious enough to check out your LinkedIn profile too. Use the same keywords you see in the job ad. Many companies reuse the same phrases in multiple job posts, So match those words in your resume to help it pass through the company's screening software. Apply around 5:30 p.m. on Monday. This timing can help your resume land near the top of the recruiter's list when they check applications the next morning. Some people send in a test application just before submitting their real one. The first application is plain and simple, which can make your real resume stand out more. It also helps test how the system works. Some tracking systems even note the time you applied. Don't be afraid to apply twice, once early and again a week later. Hiring goals can shift, and a second try might catch a different recruiter's attention. Some recruiters don't review past applicants again. Adding a photo to your resume can help it stand out. If you include one, wear professional clothing to make a strong first impression. Mention hobbies or activities, especially those that involve teamwork or volunteering. Playing team sports or helping your community shows that you know how to work with others, which employers value. Cover letters often aren't read, but if you decide to include one, keep it short. Focus on when you're available and why you're interested in the role.